when Petra gave me a tray filled with champagne glasses and murmured, "Just circulate and serve drinks. At least you'll be occupied." I had the chance to clarify my identity instantly. I could have announced myself to every attendee in that ballroom who were employees of a firm I had secretly owned for 3 years. Yet I chose not to. Instead, I flashed a smile, grabbed the tray, and navigated through the sea of 200 people. I waited patiently because I'd learned earlier that the greatest strength a man possesses is allowing truth to speak for itself. My name is Lawrence Calloway, aged 51. 17 years ago, I established Calloway Strategic Group in Boston, Massachusetts, from a small apartment in Alston with an old laptop and no clients on my list. Currently, CSG stands as a medium-sized marketing company, situated in Boston's financial district on State Street, with satellite locations in Chicago and Atlanta. The company's annual income is substantial enough to leave many in awe. I am not one who seeks validation from a crowd of people clutching cocktail napkins, but my wife Petra had once questioned my success. If you have ever felt overlooked by the person who should have seen you most, follow me as this tale unfolds into unanticipated territories. Prior to recounting what transpired that fateful evening at the Langham Hotel on Franklin Street, I request a small favor. Leave a comment to inform me of your location. I read every one diligently. Now, allow me to transport you back to the origin. Petra and I crossed paths 11 years ago at a charity event for Boston Children's Hospital on Longwood Avenue. In a PR firm, she served as a brand coordinator when we started dating. She was the most composed woman among many attempting to appear significant. Her air of self-assurance suggested she felt at home everywhere she went, which I respected and fell for. We spent 2 years together before marrying in a Boston Harbor hotel ceremony, overlooking the waterfront that my mother still recounts at every family gathering. In our early years, we were a united duo. She recognized ambition due to her own pursuit while I was constructing. We shared laughs about late hours, cold dinners, and silent nights, acknowledging the struggles. It was tough, but it was ours. Petra's challenge, however, became apparent later. She compared her success not to her past achievements, but to those immediately around her. She compared herself to whoever was nearby, and for quite some time, I stood near enough that she felt proud of me. However, around 4 years into our marriage, something changed. She landed a senior role at Revere Communications, a well-established marketing agency in Boston, located on Congress Street. The company had a unique culture, offering formal lunches at costly restaurants in the Seaport District, weekend getaways in the Berkshires, and a social life that demanded a specific style of attire and conversation. Petra embraced this new environment entirely. Over time, the woman who once shared takeout from the Thai restaurant on Commonwealth Avenue with me began to care deeply about others' perceptions. I didn't resent her for any of it. People evolve. People alter. I comprehended the desire to be part of something larger. What left me puzzled was the shift in belonging somewhere to evoke feelings of exclusion for me. It began subtly. Remarks at social gatherings where she would summarize my profession vaguely and diminutively, such as "Lawrence works in consultancy." Or even more hurtful when one of her acquaintances inquired about my occupation, she'd reply, "He manages a modest marketing firm," and swiftly change the subject before anyone could probe further. Initially, I justified it by thinking she was anxious or preoccupied, or perhaps overly sensitive, but as time went on, I realized these were simply excuses. Initially, at home, I faced comments and suggestions such as dressing better for her work functions, implying my attire was subpar, and advising a change in my pitch when conversing with her colleagues, insinuating my presentation of my business was unprofessional. There was also a gradual, continuous shift in the way Petra looked at me, transforming from the man she'd chosen to build a life with into someone requiring management. However, I remain authentic as I have always been. CSG continued growing during these years. We expanded our Chicago office 3 years into our marriage with Petra. A national account with a Cambridge-based pharmaceutical company elevated our status significantly. I also served on the boards of 2 nonprofit organizations in Greater Boston. Despite this, my identity remained unaltered. What transformed was Petra's perception of it. 3 years passed, Revere Communications, where Petra had ascended to Senior Director of Client Strategy, encountered significant financial difficulties. Poor management at the helm, losses in accounts, and a mismanaged expansion into New York created a dire situation. The founder sought discreet departure. A network contact in Boston's business community relayed this intention to me. I conducted meticulous due diligence on Revere for 6 weeks. The company's foundation was strong, its talent capable, and client relationships salvageable with careful management. The issue was structural and cultural, a leadership void at the top. I opted to acquire a controlling stake through an investment vehicle designed for such opportunities. The transaction was facilitated via intermediaries. The place was tidy, peaceful, and fully prepared without many of Revere's staff realizing their proprietorship had switched hands. I maintained my role discreetly for reasons I shall disclose later. I introduced a competent managing partner named Harmon Adler to assume the operational CEO position at Revere Communications. Harmon, boasting 15 years in the marketing and communications sector, was both sharp and well-regarded. Capable of handling daily operations, he was aware of my status as the primary investor and understood the command structure. He and I spoke every 2 months to discuss performance indicators and strategic plans. Petra recognized Harmon as her superior. She held him in high regard. Conversations about him at the dinner table were filled with the kind of respect she no longer extended to me. Unaware was she that the individual approving Harmon's contract, directing the company to which she devoted 60 hours weekly, and whose signature legitimized Revere Communications, was her spouse. I concealed this fact partly for tactical purposes. Intertwining personal and professional relations in a compact market like Boston can cause intricacies. Yet it would not be truthful to deny that there was a segment of me curious about the reality of Petra's existence when she believed I wasn't present, merely Lawrence, the manager of a modest marketing enterprise. Now I comprehend what I had witnessed. The Langham Hotel on Franklin Street, Boston, is one of the city's most striking hotels. Housed in the old Federal Reserve Bank building, it exudes an imposing architectural stature. High ceilings reaching 14 feet, original stonework, and such spaciousness that one feels history scrutinizing you. For 9 years, Petra had neglected to invite her husband to their company's annual client appreciation gala, which they had arranged at a ballroom. The guest list included 200 clients, partners, senior staff, and some local business figures she had cultivated. This event, on which she had been working for months, she informed me about 3 weeks prior. She shared the date, location, and dress code, but not an invitation to me. Despite this, she mentioned her attendance at the firm's gala a week later without any further conversation. I brought up the matter casually afterward, inquiring if I would be accompanying her. She looked thoughtful for a moment before responding that it was a professional setting and she didn't think it would be appropriate for me. When I inquired about her reasoning, she said she wanted to prevent me from feeling out of place. I inquired as to why she believed I might feel uncomfortable at a marketing event given my own marketing company. She responded with another look and said, "You understand what I mean." Our interaction ended there. However, I contacted Harmon the next day and informed him of my attendance at the event, requesting that I be seated near the back and included on the guest list. Additionally, I expressed a desire to blend in organically, asking him to welcome me casually without making a spectacle unless necessary. Given our working relationship, Harmon understood. He assured me there would be a seat, and then after a pause he asked, "Should I be worried about something, Lawrence?" I replied, "Not concerning the business." He didn't ask any further questions. On the day of the gala, Petra departed from her house in the Southern District. The brownstone on Tremont Street, with my name on its deed, stood magnificent in a navy gown I'd never seen before. She told me not to keep her waiting, gave me a goodbye kiss on the cheek, and left through the door. 34.5 minutes later, I stepped into the Langham. I want you to grasp what I observed before the events took an unfortunate turn. The ballroom mirrored your expectations. Soft lighting, circular tables draped in white cloth, a string quartet playing near the entrance, the type of upscale atmosphere a company uses to reassure clients they've made the right decision. I entered through a side passage Harmon had arranged access to, and I found myself standing by one of the service stations, close to where staff prepared trays and coordinated drink service before circulating. A young events assistant, barely into his 20s, was having trouble balancing a tray filled with champagne glasses. In an instant, I observed him, followed by my swift action to grab the spare tray positioned on the service table. With numerous rooms encountered throughout my life, I knew well how to carry such items gracefully. A secret craving stirred within me to traverse this room unnoticed, to observe the sights hidden behind anonymity. Thus, I strolled, holding a tray laden with champagne while surveying Petra's performance. She was exceptional, radiating confidence, emanating warmth, finding the perfect moments for laughter and gentle touches, delivering remarks that resonated. I had long recognized her skill in this arena. Witnessing her thrive, even at this stage of our marriage, stirred within me a complex emotion I labeled as pride. However, our eyes met, and her face swiftly transitioned through various expressions, surprise, bewilderment, and finally settling on an emotion that combined irritation and embarrassment. Hurrying towards me, she left the group behind, her heels echoing determinedly on the marble floor. "Lawrence," she whispered sharply. "What are you doing here?" I replied casually. "I came to show my support." The tray in my hands caught her attention, then a swift glance around to check if anyone was watching. "You can't just," she began, interrupting herself when she saw the serving tray. "I found it near the entrance," I explained. A staff member seemed flustered. "All right, put it down," she instructed, still scanning the room. "This is a business function. My associates are present. My clients are here. I don't need you roaming about with a drink tray as if you were employed here." I met her gaze and asked, "Shall I place it down?" She paused, then performed an action that I will never forget. Drawing near, she whispered softly, a tone indicating her desire to ignore the situation, and said, "Lawrence, simply mingle and serve drinks if you're seeking something to do. It might make you seem more at ease here." Every word was distinctly audible. She departed towards her group, and I watched her leave, reflecting on the past 17 years of creating from nothingness. I thought about our apartment in Alston, our second-hand laptop, and the 11 years since my partner and I publicly pledged ourselves to each other. I considered the deed to our brownstone on Tremont Street and my company's controlling stake, which was hosting this event we were currently attending. Then, clutching the tray, I moved through the room, delaying my actions because I wasn't quite ready yet. I desired more time for her. Over 3 laps of the ballroom, I circulated with that tray. I provided champagne to 7 individuals, among whom were 2 recognized clients from Revere's financial reports, one of whom was a city council member known personally due to our shared nonprofit board. The latter exhibited genuine perplexity, attempted to speak but was halted by my subtle head shake. He gracefully recovered, accepted a glass, nodded knowingly, thanked me, and continued moving. I wished to express gratitude toward him for that moment. Upon approaching Petra's group the 4th time, she stood with 3 colleagues and they were laughing at her story. As I approached, I heard her say, "He has good intentions, truly. He just tends to be a bit disoriented in such settings. He runs a small business and that's all right, keeps him busy." More laughter followed. A woman in red, one of Petra's colleagues, glanced my way as I walked past and questioned, "Is that him, the one carrying the tray?" To which Petra, without looking, responded affirmatively, "Yes, the one with the tray." In a nearby station, I placed the tray down, and that's when Harmon Adler approached me. Harmon, a tall, silver-haired man with an undeniable professional air, moved toward me effortlessly, his hand outstretched. His expression was one of composed warmth, typical of a skilled professional intrigued by the situation. I had revealed very little. I could see him analyzing the scene, me in my suit, the untouched tray, and my proximity to Petra. "Lawrence," he greeted me, his voice perfectly measured, clear, and audible to those nearby without broadcasting across the room. He shook my hand firmly with both hands. "I'm delighted you could attend tonight." Petra turned around. I observed her face transform gradually at first, then suddenly, like a building altering shape due to a shifting foundation. Harmon kept his grip on mine as he leaned towards Petra's group, exhibiting the casual grace of a host who had managed rooms like this for many years. "Petra," he addressed her casually, as if only now noticing her presence, "you didn't mention Lawrence Calloway was coming tonight. I would have ensured he sat at the main table." He turned back to me. "Lawrence, my apologies. Was there no one to assist you upon your arrival? We should have had you seated immediately." The woman in red froze. Petra questioned, "Harmon, what?" and then paused. Her mouth remained slightly ajar. Harmon switched his focus to the larger group with an ease bred from years of making introductions in influential settings. For those unaware, Lawrence Calloway is the primary investor at Revere Communications. He's the reason this company thrives, and quite simply, the reason any of us still have jobs here. He spoke these words with a smile, mild yet expressing deep respect. "It's wonderful to see you, Lawrence. Let me fetch you a suitable drink, not?" He glanced towards the table's service tray, and a brief emotion flashed across his eyes. "Not that." The champagne glass crashed onto the marble floor a fraction of a second later, having been held by Petra. The shatter echoed crisp and clear, silencing the surrounding noise for roughly 3 seconds. People looked around. The quartet, timing seemingly orchestrated cosmically, had just finished playing and momentarily paused. In that pause, Petra stood in the Boston Langham's ballroom amidst her peers and clients, with a look on her face I had never seen before. It was not anger nor defiance, but understanding, the somber kind of arrival. I met her gaze squarely. Harmon swiftly alerted an event staffer for cleanup, maintaining a calm demeanor and skillfully guided me away from the congested area, a maneuver he'd perfected throughout his career in managing complex environments. As we approached the main table, he quietly whispered to me, "I have queries." I replied, "I understand." He then said, "Tomorrow morning," to which I responded, 8 o'clock. The remainder of the Sauerbiert event was an unusual experience, hard to describe adequately. I occupied the main table, my designated seat since the outset, and interacted with clients, partners, and colleagues, remaining unchanged. Not a waiter, not a small venture, but simply Lawrence Calloway, who consistently constructed something tangible and continued doing so despite the watchful eyes. Petra didn't speak with me for the remainder of the night. I caught a glimpse of her from afar in the room, standing slightly isolated from her group while gently holding a fresh glass of champagne. She appeared diminished, not in a gratifying way, but rather exhaustingly so. We departed separately later. I arrived at the brownstone before her. Upon arrival, I filled a glass with water, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. She showed up 40 minutes later, standing in the doorway of the kitchen in her navy dress, holding one high-heeled shoe in hand, and staring at me for an extended period without uttering a word. Afterwards, she sat opposite me, and we had what seemed to be the most genuine conversation we'd shared in years. It wasn't a loving exchange or one with a tidy resolution. It was merely truthful. She inquired about how long I had owned Revere. I revealed this information. She also asked why I never disclosed it to her. I responded honestly, explaining that I wanted to see what she saw when she looked at our life, and I had indeed seen it with utmost clarity. She expressed remorse, and I sensed sincerity, the kind that arises when the consequences of the apologized action have already unfolded. I won't mislead you by claiming we resolved issues that evening. There will be no tidy conclusion here where a ballroom disclosure miraculously mends what had been fraying for decades. Life doesn't follow such a schedule. What I can assure you is that an authentic moment transpired within that room, one that had been brewing for a prolonged period, and it took place in front of onlookers, leaving no room for denial or downplaying. The tray, her words, Harmon's reaction, the shattering champagne glass on the marble floor of the Langham Hotel, all were genuine occurrences. Sometimes, truth resounding powerfully within a crowd is the only way it eventually reaches the person who desperately needed to hear it. To those who understand this message, I have a direct remark. If you're the one working diligently beneath the radar in your relationship, assuming your efforts are visible, sometimes they aren't. The most hazardous invisibility can occur within your own household, instigated by someone who ought to know you best. This type of invisibility isn't about your value, it's about their perception. And their perception is their burden to rectify, not yours to diminish. I didn't provide my wife with weapons against me by defending myself at every comment, at every gathering, at every minor task and endeavor. I let the work speak for itself. I continued building. On a Thursday night on Franklin Street in Boston, amidst a crowd and string quartet music and champagne, the work resonated loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear it clearly. 9 years after she informed me at the Boston Harbor Hotel with its waterfront backdrop, she had ceased seeing me. I had waited too long for her to gaze upon me without my encouragement. The following morning, as scheduled, Harmon and I met at a coffee shop on State Street at 8 o'clock. He cradled his cup in both hands and gazed at me across the table, asking, "So what transpired last night?" I recounted the tale, omitting the entire marriage but including the evening, the platter, and the dialogue. Upon my conclusion, he remained silent for a moment before stating, "Most CEOs I've worked with would have made their presence known at the door." I acknowledged his remark. He then inquired, "What were you seeking?" After pondering, I replied, "I believe I was searching for validation that I was mistaken." Harmon nodded slowly and responded, "And," I continued, "I was not mistaken." He sipped his coffee and asked, "What do you require from me professionally?" That is the essence of Harmon Adler. He skillfully recognized when the personal discourse ended and the professional began, ensuring neither felt neglected. I assured him Revere was competently managed and there were no structural adjustments. He expressed his gratitude. In a soft tone, he mentioned, "Lawrence, though I realize it's not significant at this moment, she's exceptionally capable in her role, regardless of other facts." I acknowledged this. I had always been aware of this fact. The awareness itself was never an issue. Now I comprehend aspects I hadn't fully grasped when I constructed CSG from that Alston apartment, working tirelessly for 16 hours a day, settling for quick and affordable meals, and convincing myself the hardships were momentary. I grasp now that solitary success, success unacknowledged by those closest to you, fails to integrate into their perception of your identity, leaving you exposed and overlooked by them. The importance of work lies in its relevance to those who truly observe it. For 9 years, I was observed without being comprehended, a distinction that holds significance. Observing implies someone's physical presence, understanding signifies grasping the essence. Petra watched me daily, observing the man who rose at 5:30 am to scrutinize reports before she even woke up. She observed the man who took calls on weekend afternoons when she was preparing for her colleagues' dinner parties. However, she saw my endeavors as inconsequential, a minor project meant to occupy me. I cannot pinpoint the exact moment this judgment was made, nor can I say whether it was a sudden decision or an insidious accumulation, like corrosion, unnoticed until it causes a collapse. By the time of the Langham Gala, it was all completed. The shattering of the champagne glass wasn't a start. It was an unveiling of what had already concluded. I remain in Boston. CSG continues on State Street. Harmon still oversees Revere Communications with the consistent proficiency that brings me satisfaction for my decision to acquire it. In the past year, I have discovered aspects about myself that could not have been learned otherwise, truths about what I am prepared to endure in pursuit of harmony, and truths about what I can no longer tolerate at any price. On Tremont Street's brownstone, I have confronted myself on nights when the city's silence is the only sound, and I have been sincere with myself in ways that are neither pleasant nor pristine. But they are real. And at 51 years old, after 17 years of constructing something from nothing, I have determined that reality is the sole thing that still captivates me. 30 seconds following the champagne glass shatter, the string quartet resumed their performance. The music persisted, the rooms endured, and life continued unabated. Meanwhile, the man with the tray remained stationary, continuing his construction work, unchanged in essence though no longer bearing another's blindness as if it were his own burden.